It's going to be a lovely day in hell. Hazbin Hotel, Season 1. I've now seen all 8 episodes of the first season, so I can give my opinion on the thing as a whole. If you missed it, over on the main channel, I had a more extensive video about episode 4 in particular, which is very good, but I had very complicated feelings about, and I kind of used what that episode was doing to springboard into a larger conversation using it as an example. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's the video, link in the corner. I'll try and remember to put it in the description. Feel free to remind me if I forget that. About half the time I say I'm going to put a link in the description, I forget. Anyways, so I've talked about Hell of a Boss before. This is the same original creator, some of the same crew, crossing over between the two shows as well. And it's technically set in the same universe as Hell of a Boss. No meaningful crossover between that and this. I'll honestly be a little bit surprised if there is, just because this is going out on Amazon. Hell of a Boss is an independent production, and things can get dicey trying to get independent things to show up in an Amazon related, and I'm pretty sure if they wanted to get any of the characters from Hazbin Hotel to show up in Hell of a Boss, there'd probably be a hefty payment to Amazon to get the approval to do so. So I'm not expecting that, but like there are little things like I saw imps at one point. Oh, I'm like, oh, it's Hell of a Boss imps. Not like the imps, like the actual main characters, but just like the species. If you even know Hell of a Boss, if you have any idea what I'm talking about. Anyways, if you already know Hell of a Boss, you have a decent idea what you're getting into with this, at least in terms of visuals, tone, and overall feel of the thing. It's that similar kind of high energy, frequently obscene, lots of swearing, liberal amounts of violence. I hesitate to call it excessive, I guess. No, that's not accurate. At times, the violence is excessive, but it's cartoonishly excessive. It's slapstick levels of excessive, almost. It's not excessive in a way that feels cruel, by and large. Like, for me, something that is particularly violent is usually violent in a way that is unpleasant. This is like, it's a lot of slapstick combat with just way more blood per hit than you are normally expecting. Now, I don't say slapstick to minimize the impact of some of the violence of some of the scenes. I think in some of them, especially in the finale, some of that impact does land well. And I don't mean physical impact, I mean emotional impact. There's a fair bit going on. I haven't even discussed the premise yet. That's why I call these rambling reviews. So this is set in hell. And in hell, the literal daughter of Lucifer, Charlie, has a mission to try and redeem sinners. There is a distinction between sinners and demons. Sinners are people who at one point were human, died, went to hell. Now, sinners aren't just necessarily any old person, and they're not even necessarily getting tortured in hell. By and large, hell kind of appears to be a just much worse version of Earth in a lot of ways. Like all the worst aspects ramped up a bit more. But the day-to-day life is not a million miles away. And sinners can just be, semi-ordinary people. They can also attain some level of power. There's what's called the overlords, many of whom, I think all of whom in this particular show are or were just normal sinners who gained more power by some means or other. And that's not a permanent state either. They can lose that power that they gained as well. But anyways, Charlie's whole thing is trying to redeem the sinners and help them become the better version of themselves and to ideally be allowed to get into heaven. She hasn't actually cleared this with heaven yet. That's on her to-do list. It's on her docket. Try and get heaven to actually approve this. But she's gone ahead and opened up the hotel and said, hey, come and check in and I'll work with you. We'll all work with you to try and get you better. As far as characters go, Charlie is kind of the token upbeat person surrounded by horrible people. And she works for that well. There's her girlfriend, Vaggie, who is voiced by Stephanie Beatrice. So, like, and very much channeling Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So that it just kind of made me happy on principle. As far as other characters go, the primary recurring ones, there's Alistair, who I like a lot. He's also called the Radio Demon. First of all, I have fun with that old-timey radio voice. I find that to be an entertaining thing, especially when you are using it more ironically or almost in a sinister manner, the way Alistair generally presents and behaves. He's also an archetype I like, which is somebody who is ostensibly an ally to your protagonist, but also clearly has his own agenda and is immensely powerful, but cannot be depended on or trusted, but also is too powerful to not try and get to help you. So like, I just kind of like that. There's the lovely detail about him that he is always smiling. His smile never goes away. That's not to say there's one note. There will be changes in delivery of lines or shifts, even as the smile holds, like eyes narrow and other things that like you can tell when he's ticked. You can tell when he's not happy with what's going on, but that smile, it is always there. I like that as a touch. I just like, he reminds me a little bit of Alucard from Hellsing, if you've ever seen that. So I enjoy him. There's Angel Dust, who is a porn star. I don't mean like was one in life and is now in hell for that. No, I mean he's a porn star in hell. It's not a great situation. That is covered largely in episode 4. And again, that's sort of covered in the other video I already did. But he's sort of the main one that seems to be trying to get himself together and his life into a better place. Some of the others are, but he's the one who seems to be doing the most active work, not continuously, but at least intermittently, to try and move forward with that. There's Husk, who, I mean, he's a bartending cat voiced by Keith David. I was always going to love him, just on principle. There is Serpentis, who is this sort of serpent would-be supervillain who Alistair just kicks his ass casually very early on, and then the guy's like, I guess I'll check into the hotel because trying to be an evil mastermind didn't work. It's I don't know. It's kind of cute in an odd way. Then there's Nifty. Nifty is the maid at the hotel. Nifty is not okay. Nifty is unhinged in the best way. She's a lot of fun. She's the epitome of a supporting character. She does not get major focus, but when she shows up, I'm usually smiling pretty well. I will say, comparing this to Hell of a Boss, this has a much stronger sense of what it is right off the bat than Hell of a Boss did, if I'm going to compare it to its first season. Going back to Hell of a Boss, the first couple of episodes, and some of the early ones, it feels like the show hasn't really settled into what it wants to be, or hasn't, maybe a better way to put it, hasn't fully realized its strengths yet. This has a much stronger start and seems to really know both what it is and what it wants to do pretty much from the get-go. A lot more songs in this. There's, I believe, 2 songs per episode in every episode. And there are some good ones. Oddly, again, the one I've already talked about, episode 4, I think does have the best songs with Loser Baby and Poison, but there's a bunch of decent ones. There's one from an early, I think it's Stayed Gone, and then there's one there's a song that takes place in heaven that's actually really good. There's some good ones in here, for sure. Not all of them are as memorable as others, but they also have a pretty good voice cast. I mentioned Stephanie Beatrice and Keith David. They are definitely people whose voices I recognize and I can name right off the bat. But there were a few other voices I recognize, some I didn't, but who still did solid work. There isn't a weak voice. They all are very high energy by and large. Keith David is about as mellow as it gets. And that's just sort of a natural thing of his voice. But by and large, it is a lot of high energy. Well, it's high energy characters, high energy situations, high energy performances. So if that's something you just kind of find exhausting, this just frankly might not be the show for you, just flat out. I did enjoy it. I had a lot of fun with it. Like, Hell of a Boss kind of primed me for what this is, and I think that helped. If I was going to make a substantive critique of this, there are times, and it's not constant, so I don't want to overstate this, but there are times that this feels like an adaptation that depends on having read the book. Now, that's not me saying that there is a book. I'm just using that as a comparison. What I mean by that is there were frequently things that I would find out later, and I would consider to be pretty vital pieces of information in terms of the lore or character details or background or even who some of these people even are, that the show doesn't really give you. That information does exist, but it's from the pilot episode, or it's from a comic book, or it's from a music video that was done before the release of the thing. And I'm not going to say the show was wrong to sort of lean on the idea that many of the people, or even most of the people watching, have already engaged with those. This was very much a fan enthusiasm-driven project. That's why it got picked up by A24 and by Amazon Prime. So I think it's understandable that they kind of come in on an assumption that our fans know a lot of this stuff. We can kind of gloss over it. But speaking as someone who basically came in on the show to watch the show, you know, details like the fact that if a sinner gets killed in hell, they're not permanently gone. They can come back. It's just a slow and painful process. That isn't covered at all. So within the confines of the show, it's unclear why it's a bigger deal that some intermittently angels come down and exterminate the sinners when we're seeing the sinners kill each other all the time. That the distinction between why one of those is different than the other, because when the angels use angelic weapons, that permanently just wipes these beings out. So that is something that is kind of important to the lore, and it's just never mentioned. There are other characters, and again, this kind of came up in the comments section on the other video I did, where I would find fans defending the depiction of these characters based on what time period the character was from before they died and went to hell. And while that can at least that sort of answer in general doesn't always fix a problem if it's there, or like if there's a troublesome trope or whatever. But broadly speaking, that can give context to why a character's a certain way. Except I had, you know, them telling me, well, this character's from the 70s, this character's from the 30s. Like, the show didn't tell me any of that. Again, the fans weren't wrong. This isn't fan theory. This is confirmed stuff. This is canonical, but it's not in the show. Heck, there's a bit towards the end. There's a brief moment where Angel does like very comfortingly scoops up this pig, which is his pet pig. I'm not sure that pig was properly established earlier in the show. If it was very casually. That pig got introduced in a comic. I don't think his name even gets said in the show. It might have. I watched this over several weeks. It might have been said, but like, legitimately, when I watched the last episode, I'm like, did the pig get established? Because I don't remember the pig. And even if it did get established, like, not enough that this moment of this reuniting of spider porn star sinner and pig pet, that meant nothing to me because I was busy going, have I seen that pig before? Because I couldn't remember. Because even if he was there, he was barely there. But obviously this is something that's important to the character. And again, that's not in the show. And again, I want to circle back to my saying, I don't want to overemphasize this. This is not a persistent, like, across the board problem, but it is a feel. I would at times be left with this feeling like sometimes it would feel like I turned over 2 pages at once. Other times it would feel like, oh, I guess I'm just not supposed to understand that, only to find out later that no, actually, people, well, most fans, it seems like, in terms of my interactions, very clearly know this. I just don't, because there seems to have been an expectation that I would have taken in a ton of outside stuff instead of just going, oh, that's a spin-off. Well, not technically Hell of a Boss is the spin-off, even though that came out first. It's weird. I don't want to get into that. But me going, oh, that's related to this other thing that I've seen and enjoy. Now it's out. Now watch it. speaking as someone who took it in that way and didn't know all the additional stuff, it's funny, there was a point at which I thought, like, if that had been the case in Hell of a Boss, I would have been more forgiving, because that is, for lack of a better way to put it, a little bit more of an amateur project. That's not really the right word, because these people are professionals and are ideally all being paid. But like, it's being self-published. There we go. Self-released. And so there's often like a little rough around the edges nature to that is a bit more forgivable with that thing. Once it gets put in the hands of a major studio and a major publisher, major distributor, you kind of expect those edges to be sanded off a bit, for better or worse. Sometimes the edges get sanded off in a way that's like, oh, it doesn't feel the same anymore. But the thing is, I don't remember having that kind of issue with Hell of a Boss. I don't remember finding myself thinking, what's going on there, only to realize I was supposed to know because of outside stuff. If it happened, it didn't stand out. It did to me a little bit in this. And honestly, I don't even want to say that this is a fault of like the writing or the presentation. I honestly think it might just be a fault of time. If each episode was given 2 more minutes, they would have had the space to have this stuff in there, because as breakneck as the pace of this thing often is, individual scenes generally don't feel super rushed. They usually progress at a good pace. They're just, high energy scene, high energy scene, high energy scene. But it sometimes it feels like there should have been something in there in between some of these things to maybe establish some of this other stuff. And I honestly think just a couple more minutes per episode would have given them more than enough breathing room to have this stuff in there. But then again, if it was designed intentionally with the assumption that the fans already know this stuff, they may have genuinely made the decision, you know what, we don't have to cover that. Or it may have been a case of, well, we don't have the time to cover that, and most people will know. So, like, I don't know if it was more of an active decision or like a fallback sort of acceptance with the time limit that they were given per episode. I don't know, and I can't speculate. But like a couple more minutes per episode, I think would have helped the feeling like I'm watching an adaptation that cut some stuff from the source material that maybe I kind of needed to know. And again, that's not literally what happened with this. That's just a feel that it has sometimes. But that is certainly not enough to like put me off the show or make me go, ugh, I'm not going to watch this again, or even feel that it's particularly exhausting, because none of the things that I found myself going, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, were things that made me disengage from the show. It just was like, oh, all right, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but okay, I'll just roll with it. So again, it wasn't a massive detriment, but when there's something that I feel is worth criticizing about a piece of work, even a piece of work that I enjoyed, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's who I am. It's what I do. But I did enjoy this. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to emphasize it. I enjoyed this. I hope it gets more seasons. I don't know if they've announced a second season yet. Again, not being the kind of fan that this may be designed for, who like follows the creators and follows, blogs and comics and all this other stuff. Like, maybe it's been announced. I don't know. But this was good. This was solid. This has a pretty firm story, but definitely plenty of space to grow, plenty of places to go later, but also has a satisfying conclusion within its first season for its immediate stuff going on. It picked, without getting into spoilers, it picked an antagonist. It's like, we're going to deal with this, and by the end of the season, we'll have dealt with this. Bunch of other stuff still to deal with, but we dealt with that. So it still has that satisfying climactic feel in the finale, which is what you need, because the trick with doing a season where there's very clearly a bunch of stuff still not revealed or not resolved, you need to at least give us something, some core conflict, some core foe, something that can be resolved by the end of the season, even though a bunch of other stuff won't be. And this has that. That's what it needed, and I hope it gets more. Hazbin Hotel. Yeah, if this is your jam, this kind of more adult animation with swears and open acknowledgement of sex and drugs and drinking and violence, yeah, give it a shot. If that's not your jam, like, don't. If that kind of thing isn't for you, this is not going to turn you around on it. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. Whatever your thoughts are on this, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about them. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help as well. I don't know why I said it like that. I talked really fast this time, but now I'm just like I'm winding down. I don't know. Don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, clearly, by how loosey-goosey this one was in particular. So you can just come on back next time you need a break. And I'd like to thank my highest supporting patrons, Robin Moore, Zubin Lafula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Geek Filter, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie 808, Becky Sparks, Frenobulax the Poodle, Robin Powell, T-Love, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pau Barabajoggle, and Mara G. Yes, we do have new rats in the house. Whoa, you want it? We actually have two. This is Brownie. I couldn't get Sprite to come out, but say hi. Thanks for the support.